Hello, ma'am. We are with us, Hasina Kharbhih. She is the founder and managing director of Impulse Social Enterprises. Welcome, ma'am, to the occasion.
Thank you.
We have a few questions for you. Firstly, I would like to ask you, environmental protection policies were hindering youth employment in communities dependent on forest resources, leading them to migrate in search of job opportunities. What are your thoughts on the correlation between environmental issues and unemployment?
As a founder of a non-profit organization, which is Impulse NGO Network, and also a founder of Impulse Social Enterprise, which is a hybrid. Now, going back to your question, when you said about environmental, we are instrument as an organization from a non-profit to file the public interest litigation in closing the 30 years old mining in Meghalaya. So mainly for us, environmental protection is a very important part when it comes to sustainable livelihood for communities, because any mining that takes place that is destructive to the environment, it's not just for a few people, but it has to be ensured that it's overall, that it is collective, it is also supposed to be long term. So when we talk about environment and the coexistence of what do you call it, the livelihood or youth participation, I just wanted to get back to one very core focus, that youth employment in the region has to go along with how they engage themselves with the protection of the environment. If you're talking about employment where you're creating opportunities as entrepreneurs, the consciousness that entrepreneurship has to also be, social impacted, and it also has to have value where it protects climate change. It also engage long-term community participation, because without that, I think being an entrepreneur or creating employment which is going to make the environment destructive, it is not something which is valuable to the community, and destruction is not something that is going to be a collective support system for overall.
Okay, that's nice. You are from Meghalaya, from Northeast India, and Meghalaya is a state where women are more powerful. Basically, it is said to be a maternal state. So even then also we see discrimination between male and female, because it is observed that the largest rural land within the country is in that state. So why do you think that this legal scenario is still there?
I think when we look from women's rights movement, it is a global scenario. It is just not about one community, one tribe, one state, one country. It cut across all communities, and I think gender participation, engagement of women's rights has been a movement that has evolved over years. And when we talk about Meghalaya, for instance, it is a matrilineal society, but women participation in decision making has not really evolved over the years. So we see women in a better situation comparing to the rest of the country, but we don't see women in leadership roles. So we don't see women in a higher position. And that is very common when it comes to the northeast of India. We have good things around us, but we also have to evolve that women's right movement is a movement that is for everybody. And in context to that, as a person coming from Meghalaya and working on women's right movement for many, many years, it's important that they have participation within the ecosystem of the customary rights, because so many customary laws in the Northeast are not codified, and we don't see women involvement into any kind of decision making, and that keeps them away from bringing in gender balance. So with time, a lot of these involvement of women's right movement, the changing trend in the customary law also has to emerge.
Now, as we know that Northeast India is a rich in natural resources, and conservation of nature is very important as well as development process should also go simultaneously. So, we would like to know from you how conservation of nature will lead to development.
As a person who started Impulse Social Enterprises, our main focus is supporting traditional skill which is eco-friendly, which is sustainable, ensuring that textile weaving goes hand in hand in a better ecosystem within the environment, and at the same time not to make it mechanized, because the more you take it into a mechanized way, then you make the environment very destructive. The way we work at Impulse Social Enterprise under the brand Empower, we encourage women traditional skill to be protected, yet enhancing value addition, bringing in market access, but also having a storytelling of the tribes from where they come from, and supporting women's economic development so that they have a choice not to migrate unsafely. But along with it, it's also the fact that there has to be a holistic participation where the ecosystem of food security, agriculture go hand in hand, and they are weaving from their own home. So that's a very important component when we're looking at development, economics, and women's right, because these three has to go in in tangent to each other, because we don't do that, then we don't see, you get one economic going further, but you are destroying the other. So it has to have that kind of a holistic way of how we intervene.
Okay. Sometimes we observe that there are lots of artisans, right, who work the craft work and all, but they are paid very less, which is very difficult for them to earn a livelihood in a proper way. So, what is your opinion about that?
To actually reduce the what we call it labor rights. I mean, basically to encourage labor rights movement, to ensure that there is an ecosystem where women are not, especially artisans,
Yes.
who are not being exploited and doesn't have middlemen to actually exploit them in terms of the work that they are doing. And since we work on fair trade, Empower works under fair trade component, we ensure that women are having a consistent market access and fair wages that is being provided to a weaver. It's not from a wage point of view, but it's more from an entrepreneurial point of view. So she make the decision of the time that she will be taking in making a particular textile, and then that is being looked in terms from a business value proposition, that there is no violation of her rights in terms of her dignity for labor and her labor rights movement. At the same time, when she have a consistent market access, then she knows that she can continue to weave. She doesn't have to think of the market. You can't expect an artisans to also be good with marketing, which is also going to be good with product line. So there has to be a collective engagement in terms of designer working together, market platform engagement. What we provide is centralized raw material distribution, centralized designing options in terms of product line, so that there's a holistic way that her participation as a weaver is encouraging her as an entrepreneur and to focus more with her skill that she's good at.
Okay. So, like in Assam, basically, it said that 35% is forest area, right? So it's a huge coverage. So, what do you feel? What steps should Assam, specifically I'm talking about Assam because the Eastern Himalayan Economics Forum is going on here only. That is why I want to know from you that how Assam should take steps to conserve nature, in a developed way.
The rich, fauna and flora that Assam has. The fact that it's also a state where it's very rich in agriculture still comparing to the other neighboring states in the northeast. There is a lot of value proposition that it can support with good market, consistent market, so that the people can continue to do what they're doing. But if these support systems are unavailable, then people migrate and leave their own land, they leave their own agricultural land, they even leave what they traditionally are good at, and then they become consumer of product that come across the border. So if we have to tap into ensuring that there is growth, economic and development growth in Assam, then we also have to see that there are policies that help to protect their production that is happening in the state. Because with the opening of borders, with connectivity across, we're also seeing that more and more people are purchasing cheaper products and purchasing, I mean, like you go to a village. I mean, in 26 years of my work, I see that when I used to go like 10 years ago to a village, I would be eating traditional food.
Mm-hmm.
But now if I go deeper to some villages, they're eating Maggi and they're eating YY, which is coming across the border. So that is the whole process, that people are finding that easier to cook than cooking a traditional food. So that is how the market is actually entering the region heavily. So we need to ensure that if we have to uplift that kind of economics, then we have to ensure that the people are protected from just being a consumer, but they have to be a producer with a good market access.
True, that is very true, ma'am. Lastly, we would like to know your expectation from this 7 Eastern Himalayan Nationomics Forum and any suggestion you would like to give for Balipara Foundation. Yeah.
I've known Balipara Foundation over many years now, and I'm privileged that I had the honor to be in this platform and share my own story and the work that we do in the region, and privileged of the fact that they're honoring me tonight for the work that I do. One way is ensuring more gender participation in the forum would be a very ideal way of getting voices at an equal. I think that is something very important. I do understand that the field and work, when we're talking about environment and protection, we don't see so much women participation, but I'm sure there are a lot more. So Balipara, one of my message to Balipara is try to get an equal participation in terms of people who are actually going to tell the story, so that there is also showcasing the strength.
Yeah, that is true, because it is said that when a boy is born, a man is born, but when a woman is born, a society borns. So it is very important, equal participation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for your
Thank you
words.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.